Most people believe becoming wealthy requires lucky breaks or genius-level intelligence. They're wrong. The truth is far more unsettling and transformative. Imagine two people born the same year. One upgrades their smartphone every 12 months, drives a leased luxury car, and posts vacation photos from Bali. The other wears a watch older than their career, lives in a modest neighborhood, and spends weekends studying tax code. Guess which one becomes a millionaire within a decade? Society screams that money comes from hustle culture or viral moments. Millionaires know better. Their secret weapon isn't hustle. It's a psychological war against impulsive desires. The first mental code cracks open a paradox. Delayed gratification isn't about sacrifice. It's about strategic greed. While the average person budgets monthly, the wealthy plan in 5-year cycles. They ask not, what can I buy today? But, what will this purchase cost me in 5,000 days? A Silicon Valley founder once confessed he still uses the same laptop from his startup days, not from frugality, but because every dollar not spent on gadgets compounds into ownership stakes in tech giants. Here's where most fail. They confuse visible wealth with real power. The middle class collects depreciating trophies, designer bags, upgraded cars, instant vacations. The rich hoard invisible assets. Online courses completed during commutes, mastermind groups that dissect financial statements, and networks that trade access instead of cash. One hedge fund manager trained himself to reallocate 20% of every potential impulse buy into skill building. His first investment, a $300 audio course he listened to while delivering pizzas. But the real trigger lies in understanding money's true nature. To the broke, cash is fuel. Burn it fast for temporary thrills. To the wealthy, it's a seed. They plant it in assets that spawn forests of passive income. A real estate mogul once explained his strategy as oxygen masking, funding income streams before indulging in luxuries, just as you'd secure your own air supply before assisting others. This mindset shift explains why 90% of lottery winners go bankrupt. They lack the psychological infrastructure to handle abundance. Now, a question that haunts most people. Why do millionaires keep grinding after hitting their first million? Because they've rewired their identity to reject complacency. One entrepreneur who sold his app for 8 figures still works 18-hour days, not for money, but because his brain now sees opportunity where others see obstacles. The middle class retires from work. The wealthy retire to work that matters. But this is merely the first layer. What comes next involves a forbidden tactic for turning time into a weapon. The middle class fears debt like a disease. Meet the investor who turned negative $50,000 into 5 rental properties, not through savings, but by mastering what he calls phantom money. While others see loans as chains, the wealthy recognize them as scalpels for precision wealth surgery. Banks don't realize they're funding their own competition. Asset obsession begins with a brutal truth. Your car is a coffin for wealth. The average person spends more on vehicles in 10 years than a millionaire invests in a duplex that pays their mortgage. Assets whisper, liabilities scream. The rich fixate on cash flow machines, apartment buildings that spit out rent checks, online courses generating royalties while they sleep, patent licenses that mint money with zero labor. One woman built a 7-figure art portfolio not by buying paintings, but by acquiring distribution rights to niche sculptors. Here's the forbidden math. Every asset clocks 24-hour days in your favor. A restaurant owner realized his eatery wasn't his real asset. The land beneath it was. He started buying parking lots near growing tech hubs, then leased them to food truck owners. Now his land bank earns more than his kitchen, but the real hack isn't acquiring assets, it's structuring them to replicate. The wealthy build self-fueling ecosystems. A software developer created a single app, then used its profits to fund a coding academy. Graduates built extensions for his platform, increasing its value. His initial asset now spawns new assets autonomously. This wealth mitosis explains why 80% of millionaires have multiple income streams before age 40. When you borrow to acquire assets, you're a partner. One investor turned down a mortgage for his home but secured 3 loans for rental properties. His logic? Banks should finance what makes me richer, not poorer. This reverse psychology forces institutions to fund your escape from the rat race. A chilling reality emerges. The middle class trains for jobs. The answer involves a twisted relationship with failure that 99% can't stomach. 97% of people see bankruptcy as the end. Millionaires treat it as orientation day. The wealthy have a parasitic relationship with failure. They feed on its nutrients while leaving the toxicity behind. A tech CEO, who's crashed 3 ventures, told me his first bankruptcy taught him more than his Ivy League MBA. His second failure revealed which friends were assets versus liabilities. His third collapse uncovered a regulatory loophole that became his billion-dollar edge. Here's the brutal arithmetic. Every loss contains exactly the data needed for your next win. If you autopsy it correctly, the middle class buries their failures like shameful secrets. The rich display them like trophies, cross-examining each misstep under forensic lights. One real estate mogul revisits his worst deal annually, not to self-flagellate, but to extract new patterns. Last year, that ritual exposed a hidden trend in zoning law changes that quadrupled his portfolio's value. Most panic when systems fail. Millionaires celebrate. It means they found the system's weak joints. A restaurateur intentionally stress-tested his business by closing 2 locations during peak season. The surviving restaurants revealed which marketing channels truly drove loyalty versus empty traffic. His controlled burns prevent future wildfires. But the real magic happens in how they frame losses. While others see a $50,000 business crash as catastrophe, the wealthy log it as tuition for their PhD in market dynamics. An e-commerce founder tracked every failed product launch into a spreadsheet. Customer complaints became his cheat code for viral products. His last 12 flops directly informed a 9-figure exit. The ultimate hack. Treating failure as a reconnaissance mission. When a crypto investor lost 7 figures in the 22 crash, he didn't retreat. He mapped which coins recovered fastest. That pattern became his algorithmic trading blueprint. Now he intentionally sacrifices small positions to expose market psychology shifts. This explains why over 90% of millionaires have multiple dead businesses in their past. Each corpse fertilizes their next venture. But surviving failure requires more than resilience. It demands ruthless self-auditing. One hedge fund manager spends every New Year's week analyzing his worst trade. Last year's review exposed a bias toward charismatic founders. A flaw has now systematized into an investment filter. Yet this emotional alchemy has a dark side. What separates the rich isn't just embracing failure. It's their willingness to burn time others consider sacred, which leads us to the most controversial wealth secret: stealing years back from your lifespan. The average person squanders 3 hours daily on decisions that millionaires systemically eliminate. Time arbitrage isn't about productivity hacks, it's about colonizing lost moments into compoundable wealth. A biotech CEO calculated that outsourcing grocery shopping, laundry, and email management effectively gifted her 8 extra years of prime working life. She didn't buy time management tools. She bought back her lifespan. Here's the brutal calculus. Every minute spent on tasks below your hourly rate is financial self-mutilation. The wealthy approach time like NASA engineers, breaking each day into mission-critical versus disposable operation. A venture capitalist pays a team of 5 virtual assistants to pre-test apps, read pitch decks aloud, and even screen potential dinner guests. His rule: if someone else can do it at 20% of his hourly, you delegate immediately. Most fall for the busyness trap, mistaking motion for progress. Millionaires measure time in opportunity cost. A novelist realized writing 2,000 words daily took 4 hours, until he hired a transcriptionist to dictate while driving. Now he writes during commutes, converting dead time into a book every 3 months. His secret? Treating time zones as territory, outsourcing editing to teams awake while he sleeps. But the real power lies in infrastructure. The rich build systems that generate time dividends. A restaurateur automated inventory ordering through AI that predicts ingredient needs based on weather, events, and even staff moods. What used to consume 6 weekly hours now runs autonomously, freeing him to scout new locations. The ultimate hack: convert linear time into geometric returns. An investor group pools resources to buy timeshares in top-tier lawyers and accountants, getting premium advice at fractional costs. Their monthly retainer gives 24/7 access to services normally reserved for billion-dollar corporations. Yet the darkest truth is this: the middle class trades time for money. The wealthy trade money for time, then leverage that time to make exponentially more money. A mobile app developer hired a CEO within 3 years of launching, despite the 50% equity hit. Why? Freeing 8,000 annual hours allowed him to develop 3 additional revenue streams. This explains why 60% of self-made millionaires wake before 5 a.m., not to work more but to claim undistracted hours for strategic thinking. They protect morning hours like Fort Knox, outsourcing afternoons to meetings and mundane tasks. One finance guru blocks his calendar in 90-minute immunity zones, where even his assistant can't interrupt. But manipulating time creates an eerie side effect. It alters your perception of reality. When minutes become measurable currency, casual scrolling feels like bleeding cash, which reveals the final psychological mutation. Wealth isn't about what you have, it's about what you've become. And what comes next will rewrite your identity at the cellular level. The final mental code rewires your deepest self-concept. Most people chase money. Millionaires become someone money can't ignore. A former teacher turned fintech founder still works 60-hour weeks after exiting his company for 8 figures. Not from necessity, because his identity now rejects stagnation. Wealthy minds don't retire, they recalibrate. Identity engineering starts with a lethal question. Who would you need to become to deserve 10 times your current income? The middle class dreams of better circumstances. The wealthy cultivate better character. One investor role-plays as his own board of directors, writing quarterly performance reviews on his decision-making skills. His shareholder meetings exposed a tendency to undervalue his time, a flaw he cured by invoicing himself for wasted hours. Here's the synaptic hack. Wealthy behaviors follow wealthy self-perception. A graphic designer started dressing for investor meetings she didn't have. Within 6 months, her confidence attracted clients who assumed she'd handled 7-figure deal. Fake it till you become it. Now she negotiates contracts like a CFO, demanding profit sharing instead of flat fees. But the real transformation happens in your social microbiome. The rich knowingly infect themselves with ambition. A startup founder audits his inner circle annually, rating contacts on a scale from drain to rocket fuel. Last year, he downgraded his childhood best friend to quarterly dinners, not from cruelty, but because nostalgia addiction was costing him $50,000 in missed opportunities monthly. The ultimate power lies in financial bilingualism. Millionaires speak both corporate and creative languages. A dermatologist learned real estate law to negotiate her clinic's lease, saving enough to buy the building. Now, her landlord payments fund her retirement. She didn't get richer, she became someone property markets couldn't exploit. This explains why 85% of self-made millionaires report feeling like imposters early on. They leaned into the discomfort until their new identity crystallized. A dropout turned crypto trader still attends Ivy League economics lectures incognito. His takeaway? Knowledge chases those who act like they deserve it. The culmination of all codes reveals wealth's dirty secret. Money flows to those who've deleted their financial ceiling. The middle class asks, "Can I afford this?" The wealthy demand, "How could I afford this?" One entrepreneur visualized his dream home for 5 years before buying it, not through savings, but by creating a consulting arm that generated exactly the needed monthly payment. These mental viruses aren't taught in schools because they collapse the system. Delayed gratification builds compound empires. Asset obsession turns banks into accomplices. Failure alchemy transmutes loss into leverage. Time arbitrage steals back your lifespan. Identity engineering makes wealth inevitable. The question isn't whether you can adopt these mindsets, it's whether you're willing to dissolve your current self to make room for what's coming. Hit subscribe. Next week we dissect how the top 1% hack sleep itself to gain 16 productive years per lifetime.